Hey, what's going on, everybody? Well, if you haven't heard by now, let me be the first to tell you. It looks like the Patreon account, allegedly by Jocelyn Savage, has been taken down. It looks like it could be possibly identity theft, or it looks like, there's some type of fraud or some type of conspiracy going on. So I wanted to make a video to talk about the Jocelyn Savage conspiracy. Basically, if you go back to the account, I actually did a video earlier. I think I called it the betrayal of Jocelyn Savage, and I think I showed her Patreon account, but here it is again. And basically, you can see that it was the account that I showed in the last video, Patreon/Jocelyn Savage, and the page has been removed. And there are some articles out there. I found one article on TMZ, which is the ultimate source of information. Sarcasm there. But basically, I think I actually found the Patreon account on TMZ's website where they were the first to talk about it. And basically, now it looks like, they've put up another post showing that the account has been retracted by Patreon. There is a post on CNN, and they also indicate Patreon closes page purported belonging to R. Kelly's girlfriend because potential impersonation. And so one of the questions is how did we get here? Basically, I think that the Patreon, or the people who subscribe to the Patreon channel or account, was directed to go there through Jocelyn Savage's Instagram account. But according to Instagram, they're saying that that account was hacked some time ago. You can check out this article on CNN. And of course, CBS News did a piece on Jocelyn Savage. You know what? It looks like everybody basically just jumped on the bandwagon when this person came out and said R. Kelly did all these things. He peed on me, he beat me, he choked me. Everybody jumped on the bandwagon, and absolutely nobody vetted this story, including Patreon, right? So I think Patreon is now coming back, to do some due diligence to basically, try to verify her identity. But it's like the damage is already done. And, I'm going to admit, I sort of fell for it because I did make a video on it, and I did put out there some information that were on these sites like TMZ, uh, CNN, and CBS. I did perpetuate that information, but I think I've always had a bit of skepticism when I made that video. And I'm not making any excuses for myself because, I mean, we live in a day and time where everybody should be smarter. You have to know that you can't really believe anything that's put out there on the internet. And one of the things I pointed out, to my viewers, is that I didn't actually subscribe to the account because I thought it was a money grab. And I thought that, and I don't know if I actually said it in the video, but basically you wouldn't know if it's actually Jocelyn Savage until a video was posted. And I think what happened was she opened this account, not she, but someone opened this account, and they basically provided like written statements, right? They wrote a story, and that was what they were providing. But there, to my understanding, to my belief, there was never an actual video of Jocelyn Savage on that account. Now, Patreon should have did its due diligence, and I think they may be liable, and I'm going to probably talk about that in another video. But right now, I just really want to focus on the Jocelyn Savage conspiracy and how most of us, I'm not going to say all of us, I'll say most of us kind of fell for it. Most of us fell for it. And I think what's actually happened here is a case of fraud, right? So let's look at the legal definition of fraud. So Here is the legal definition of fraud from Black's Law Dictionary 10th edition. And it basically says fraud is a knowing misrepresentation or knowing concealment of material fact made to induce another to act on his or her detriment. Fraud is usually a tort, but in some cases, when the conduct is willful, it may be a crime. Right? And then it goes on to say fraud has been defined to be any kind of artifice by which another is deceived, hence all surprise, trick, cunning, dissembling, and other unfair way that is used to cheat one is to be considered fraud. Right? So that's the legal definition of fraud. So let's talk about fraud in the context of this Patreon account. Now, I believe that if Jocelyn Savage did not create this account, and if she did not give anyone permission to create this account, then the person who created this account has committed fraud, right? They committed fraud because they're using Jocelyn Savage's image, they're using Jocelyn Savage's likeness, and they also used a hacked account, a hacked Instagram account to direct people to this Patreon page, right? So, as you know, a article on TMZ, I believe, or is it CNN? I think. Let's see, what is it? Yeah, it's CNN. So CNN has basically said that the Instagram account has been hacked some time ago, right? Or at least it's been alleged that the Instagram account of Jocelyn Savage has been hacked some time ago. So you have a situation, I mean, you have multiple internet crimes going on here, right? So you have the hacked account, right? So that in and of itself is likely a crime. I don't know the particular statute and I don't know the particular law or case law on hacking, right? Maybe we'll get into that in some subsequent videos, maybe not, I don't know. But you have this hacked account, someone accessed an account that they weren't authorized to access, and then they use that account to direct people over to Patreon. Now, people are saying that it's Jocelyn's parents who actually hacked the account, and they basically took control of the account, and therefore it could, be deduced that they also created this Patreon account, right? So I'm not saying that the parents actually hacked the account, and I'm not saying they created the Patreon account. I'm just throwing that out there as one theory. But I did hear the parents could have had access to her Instagram account, and then they basically posted information on the Instagram account to lead people over to the Patreon account, right? So at any rate, whether it's the parents or anybody else, whomever has done this has committed multiple crimes. One of them being fraud, and we've already read the definition of fraud. You're using Jocelyn Savage's image, you're using her likeness, and if you don't have her permission, it's fraud. And not only is it fraud, but again, there's other crimes that's being committed because you're basically getting people to pay for information that is supposedly coming from Jocelyn Savage. Now, the interesting thing to see here is whether or not the government is going to take responsibility and actually prosecute the people who created this account and prosecute the people who hacked Jocelyn Savage's account. Now, here's the thing. The government actually has an obligation to do this, right? The reason they have an obligation to do this is because the general public have paid for information coming from Jocelyn Savage. I don't think most people would have subscribed to that account if there wasn't a misrepresentation that it was Jocelyn Savage. Now, the government, honestly, in my personal belief, has an obligation to investigate and to prosecute, right? Now, I believe that the government may not, investigate and prosecute because it's basically going to strengthen their case, right? In my opinion, I think it would because the people who basically got this information from this Patreon account, they're not going to be focused on the fact that it's hacked. They're not going to focus on that, right? They're going to focus on the information that has come out of this account, whether it's true or not, right? And I think the general public, including several news outlets such as CNN and NBC, they've actually perpetuated this information. The article should be about the misinformation, but they're focusing on the alleged acts, and this is what's going to be stuck in the general public's mind. It's not going the general public is not going to be concerned with whether or not this information is true. So the government has an obligation to investigate and prosecute, but like I said, they are not going to do that because it's going to help their case. The people who are feeding off of this information, they're not going to focus on whether or not the information is true. They're not going to focus on whether or not the source is credible. They are going to focus on the beating, the choking, the forced peeing, or the forced abortions. That's what the general public is going to focus on, whether or not any of that stuff is true, right? So the government may not prosecute in this situation. Now, the other interesting thing here is I'm actually trying to figure out if it's actually Jocelyn Savage's account, right? And the reason I say that is because in the first video that I did, I think I called it the betrayal of Jocelyn Savage. I basically came up with a theory that it could be a ploy from the R. Kelly camp, and they're laying a trap for the prosecutors, or they want to show how easy it is for misinformation to be put out there so that they can use it in the case somehow. Now, I know it sounds like a crazy strategy here, but I think it could potentially work. They could, in fact, show that, hey, you can't believe everything you hear and see on the internet, and that could possibly be a defense. I know it sounds really crazy, but it's a possibility. It's a possibility that the account was created because they wanted to raise additional money for the R. Kelly camp, or even just Jocelyn Savage. I mean, it's crazy, but there could be in some parallel universe a theory where R. Kelly says, "Hey, go ahead and create this account. Uh, say whatever you want to say. Just come out and refute that information before the case starts, and you can keep the money. And you can just say you put that information out there for entertainment purposes only, right? So that's one of the crazy theories in my head. I know it's bizarre, I know it's crazy, but in a parallel universe, it could be a possibility, right? So let me know what you think. Do you think this is actually Jocelyn Savage's account? Do you think this is a impersonator? Do you think if it is an impersonator, do you think they should be prosecuted for fraud? And do you think the government is actually going to take action? Because I believe they are obligated to, because again, the person who created this account, if it's not Jocelyn Savage, they basically tried to get money out of the general public, and this is going to be a problem, right? And I also think that Patreon should be held liable, but I'm going to save that later for a planned identity theft video that I have coming out. But again, let me know what you think. Do you think that the person who created this account should be prosecuted for fraud? Leave your questions and comments below.